I've heard that story too many times. You spot a cheap wine cooler online, the price looks tempting, you click buy, and a month later the unit is either humming louder than a kitchen blender or the temperature drifts like a bad thermostat. The regret that follows feels almost inevitable, especially when you're trying to protect a collection you've been building for years. That's why I spent a good chunk of the last week actually measuring the space in my own pantry, reading the specs, and digging through the handful of reviews that exist for the Empava 24-inch wine cooler. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the Empava isn't trying to be a budget option. At 67 inches tall, it's more of a statement piece, a monolithic, steel and glass tower that claims to hold up to 177 bottles. The temperature range, 41F to 64F, covers the sweet spot for everything from light whites to robust reds. And the touch control panel lets you dial it in without fiddling with knobs that get lost in the glare of a kitchen counter. Those numbers sound impressive, but the real question is, does that performance translate into everyday peace of mind for someone who actually drinks wine? If you're a serious collector, the answer leans toward yes. The 14 beechwood shelves are sturdy enough to hold a full case without sagging, and because they're hand-finished, they look like something you'd find in a boutique wine cellar rather than a generic appliance. The vertical LED lighting does more than just illuminate. It creates a soft glow that highlights each bottle, turning the cooler into a low-key display cabinet. I set mine up next to my home bar, and the soft white light makes the bottles pop without overwhelming the room, which is a nice touch for entertaining guests. Now, let's talk about the things that matter when you actually open the door. The compressor runs whisper quiet, a claim that many cheaper units can't back up. In a small apartment, you won't hear it over conversation, and the silent management of extreme thermal loads lives up to its promise. The interior temperature stays steady even when you pull out a half-dozen bottles in quick succession. That kind of consistency is something you only get from a well-engineered system, and it saves you from the headache of constantly checking a thermometer. But there are trade-offs that can't be ignored. The sheer size of this unit means you need a dedicated vertical space, and the back of the cooler needs at least a few inches of clearance for ventilation. I tried fitting it into a cramped pantry that was only 24 inches wide, and the unit wouldn't even clear the door frame. For anyone living in a typical city apartment, that's a major hurdle. The unit also runs on a single temperature zone, so if you wanted to store both a chilled roast at 50F and a room temperature Bordeaux at 62F, you'd have to compromise or buy a second cooler. That's a limitation you won't see highlighted in glossy marketing photos. Another practical concern is the price point. While I don't have the exact figure in front of me, the Empava sits firmly in the premium tier of freestanding wine coolers. The 177 bottle capacity makes sense if you already have a large collection, or if you plan to build one. If you only own a dozen bottles and are looking for a place to keep a few weekend selections chilled, you'll be paying a lot for space you'll never use. In that scenario, a smaller, perhaps 30-bottle model would give you the same temperature control without the footprint or cost. So who should consider buying the Empava? If you're a wine enthusiast who already has a growing inventory, or you're setting up a home bar that doubles as a conversation piece, this cooler checks a lot of boxes. Its silent operation, precise temperature range, and visually striking design make it a functional work of art. It also fits well in a larger dining room or a dedicated wine cellar where the height can be embraced rather than fought against. Restaurants or boutique hotels that want to showcase a curated selection could also get mileage out of the 177 bottle capacity without needing a whole separate storage room. Who should skip it? If you live in a small apartment, share a kitchen, or only enjoy an occasional glass, the size and cost become barriers. The single-zone temperature control may also be a deal-breaker for those who want to store both serving temperature whites and cellar temperature reds simultaneously. In those cases, a more compact, dual-zone model would be a smarter investment. A couple of real-world scenarios help illustrate the value proposition. Imagine you're hosting a wine tasting party for a group of 10 friends. With the Empava, you can line up a tasting flight of reds, whites, and a sparkling option, all at the exact temperatures you recommend, without having to shuffle bottles between the fridge and the table. The LED lighting guides guests to the right bottle, and the quiet compressor means the conversation isn't interrupted by a clanking sound. Conversely, if you're a single professional who enjoys